Could I pick up on
Please
that
do.
for a minute? First of all, thank you for having me here. It's great to be here. It's great to be back in Indiana, which I've visited several times over the years. In my earlier career as a television producer, thanks to a generous grant from the Lilly Endowment, I came to Indianapolis and Muncie and spent a couple of weeks here taping several PBS television programs. Had a great time. And have great affection for Indiana. I want to pick up on this idea of innovation and the role of education. And coming out of the last panel, there's a lot of interesting research being done on entrepreneurs and academic entrepreneurs, and a big focus of the book that you mentioned talk about the importance of entrepreneurs to driving innovation and to long-run economic growth. And one of the things that's been I'm sort of a congenital optimist by nature, but one of the things that gives me pause is one of the trends you've seen lately is the United States has had an enormous success, not just in providing an academic environment for aspiring entrepreneurs who need the knowledge base necessary to develop highly productive small firms that then grow up and become large firms, but in attracting foreign talent from China, Southeast Asia, and India to come here because the universities are the best in the world. There's an interesting academic named Vivek Wadhwa who is he's at both Harvard and Berkeley right now, who's been doing a lot of research on foreign-born academic entrepreneurs who come to the United States, do their academic research here, and want to start firms. That's why they come here, because the universities are the best, and also because they think it's the United States is a great place to innovate. Many of them come to great universities in Indiana. And what he's finding is that these entrepreneurs, partly because of immigration laws and how difficult it is on visa policy, and also because of the potential for only 2% growth, if that's what the growth in the United States is going to be, say, for the next 10 years, are now going back to China and India and starting small firms there rather than starting them here. That is something that should give us pause. We should be asking ourselves, why is it that these natural entrepreneurs who take the risk of, very basic risk of leaving their families, leaving what they know in their homes, maybe they come here, they don't know the language, and wanting to learn and excel at our universities so that they might start businesses, are now going back and creating them in Korea or Taiwan or India. And again, I said I'm a congenital optimist. I think these are trends that can be stemmed or reversed, but it's something that we need to think about because we do have this great base in universities like Purdue and Indiana Ball State, and we don't want to bring these folks here, educate them, and then have them return home to create businesses that we want them to make here.
May I say a few words about that? I think that's exactly on target. In fact, Purdue has the 4th largest number of foreign students in the country come to Purdue, and that's been the case for several years. Indiana University, I think, is number 15 in the country, number of foreign students. Ball State is approaching, is it 800, I think, foreign students? And the goal of your president was to get to 1,000, I think, and you're making progress there. And so you have to ask, well, say, how many of these students stay in Indiana, to your point? And not only that, how many come back to Indiana after they go back to their home territories? And the other question is, to what extent does Indiana universities reach out to those foreign students once they become alumni? Where do you think those Chinese or Indian students are in 10 years after they get an advanced degree from IU or Purdue? They're in very important places in their economies. And yet, most of our universities, if not all, and forgive me, my university friends here, their purpose in following up on the alumni is one thing: please give. Please give to Purdue. Please give to IU. No one is thinking, why don't you think about coming back to do research? Why don't you think about coming back to work with our faculty to establish a startup company or an R&D center or something like this? Or why don't you think about becoming a customer or a partner with a Hoosier company in a high-tech area? That's completely off the horizon, and I think we're missing some gold in those hills. We should mine it.
You know, and that's a great point. I would point out that Ball State's just opened the Umit Toftali Center for Financial Markets, and Umit Toftali is a Ball State graduate who's in the central bank in Turkey. So at least we're doing some asking for resources in the right places. I guess I want to ask Alan Blinder, a Princeton economist, I think 3 years ago, did a study where he broke up occupations in the United States into 4 groups, and from high ability, low ability, and then from exportability to items that had to be done here. And so you heard some reference to this earlier today. Brain surgeons have to be where the brain is. An accountant could be in Delhi, all right? And so I wonder if how much of the shifting back to interest by Indian students to going back to India, or students from Beijing going back to start businesses, is a consequence of the changing occupational structure and the World Wide Web allowing, very deep collaborations across regions, and how much of it is really the public policies that we have. Just a guess on what you think the immigration, whether or not the immigration debate and its focus in the wrong area maybe, or whether or not the colleges, universities are doing enough of the right things towards helping innovation. And I'll just throw it up to Nick first to answer those open questions.
Yeah, one thing about the Blinder, I think it was a piece in the Wall Street Journal when he first floated that notion, and it does seem scary, right? It used to be thought, well, it's only low-skilled jobs that maybe in the United States we don't really care that much about anyway, and those are all being done overseas, but we're going to have all these high-paying white-collar jobs, and that's what we really care about. And I think his alarm is a little overblown, partly because I think a lot of that alarm is overblown. I mean, even the gutting of the manufacturing sector in the United States hasn't happened to the extent that a lot of alarmists say that it has. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that U.S. employees are incredibly productive, and they're much more productive than employees in poor developing countries. Now, that mix is changing a little bit, but it's still the case. And that's also true obviously in well-paying white-collar jobs. It's also the case that talented individuals want to be near the market that they want to serve. They want to be, so I don't think that it's just going to be, well, you're going to have to move to India where you have a lower cost of living if you want to service, if you want to do accounting work for firms in Indiana. So I think he overstated things a little bit. But I do think it's a challenge for universities who need to, it's interesting you mentioned, I don't know what's going on at all the universities in Indiana, this financial center that's open at Ball State, but a good example of a program that a university has established with the eye towards taking its talented students and keeping them engaged with the idea of, say, building businesses or starting enterprises is the Deshpande Center at MIT. Which was founded by an MIT graduate, Deshpande, who, it's very interesting what they do because they understand that they have lots of folks doing great basic science and basic engineering research there who don't know a lick about starting a business, which is its own set of talents and skills and things that you need to bring, whether it's marketing and understanding a market. And they're trying to link up basic researchers with marketing professionals, venture capitalists, and others saying, here, you have an idea for something that you're doing in basic research that might have practical application. We're going to help you think through that and how you might be able to develop a marketable product and build a business. And so there are examples of this. UCSD is doing something like this. So some universities are trying to get out ahead of that, saying, we understand that whether it's our homegrown talent, native Hoosiers, or talent that we bring in from overseas, we need to take the next step, which is encourage them not just to get educated here, but also to build businesses and firms that will, be the next great American companies.
I think that's a great point. I just want to, I loved Alan Blinder's argument, and I also thought he overplayed a little bit because he missed the one point. Those of us in universities have already been through the globalization wave. And I tried to make this point a few years ago in a column expressing this to particularly manufacturing workers that were worried about it. You don't know what globalization is till you walk into an American classroom or you walk into your first faculty meeting as a young assistant professor. And U.S. universities are doing very well in that environment. And it's good. We're attracting huge amounts of talent. I'm wondering if you could expand maybe, and I'll ask Mark this question first, about what you think universities could do both internally in terms of the broader community that they serve to maybe nurture the retention of these minds, and whether or not it's overblown. Maybe we educate people and send them back. Are there benefits to that as well?
Well, you raised several reasons why the foreign-born talents that are here don't stay here. One is the visa issue. The average wait now for a Chinese or Indian academic to stay here and get a green card is like 4 years. And there's about 1 million people waiting to get green cards. And I would say that a lot of these people could really be direct contributors to our entrepreneurial, innovation, knowledge-based society. And in fact, there's studies done out in California. It was a national study that showed that in the last, I think it was 1995 to 2005, if I'm not mistaken, 1/4 of the high-tech companies started in America were founded by foreign-born founders, foreign-born immigrants, which is a huge proportion beyond the normal so-called Native American startup companies. So if we could fix our immigration issue, that would be very, very positive. There is a program that's called the EB-5 program. I don't know if you're both familiar with it. If you're a foreign person and you invest $1 million in the United States, or $500,000 in a rural area or what's considered a disadvantaged area, and that investment creates 10 jobs within 2 years of your investment, you and your immediate family get a green card. Now, there have been many communities that have started so-called centers to draw in the foreign investors. And these centers take their money and aggregate it and decide how to best invest it in the society, in the community. New Orleans has one, the state of Vermont has one. We don't have one here in Indiana. We should look into that. In fact, one of the ideas that we ought to think about, in my humble opinion, is take the biosector that we have here, this wonderful growing sector of our economy in bioscience, and you have all this collaboration between Purdue, Indiana, Notre Dame, we've heard about it. Use that as the spear point, create one of these centers to draw in foreign investors in this sector, and use that as a way to keep talent here, draw talent in, and build up our own innovation economy. It's just an example of the kind of things that we could do.
And one other element, and this ties back to the previous panel, which I've found fascinating because as I was listening to it, listening to teachers and educators saying, well, one of the things that we're doing is, we're telling students that we're teaching to the test and we're stifling creativity. And I was thinking, you're killing entrepreneurs, natural entrepreneurs, in doing that. I mean, entrepreneurs don't necessarily see problems with a neat and tidy solution. They love the messiness of a problem that's presented to them. And if you tell them that, well, there's 1 of 4 answers and you have to pick that one and that's the only right answer, they're going to chafe at that, partly because they're interested in creating a completely new order that upsets the established order that they're presented with. So if you have a K through 12 education system that has not only no emphasis on creativity, but it's actually stifling creativity, you're just choking off the latent entrepreneurial spirit that I think is inborn in lots of Americans. I mean, the United States is a naturally entrepreneurial country.